nasıl da Toma
Now, first of
bazı
all, I would like to
malum ya
offer my
Sugedambi
greetings
ki
to all of the
Sujinam
Tulkus, all of the Kempos,
Tandana
teachers,
Shiki
and spiritual
Kemudi
friends,
Shingi
all of
da
the monks and
Tsuba
nuns,
Tanda
all
Tende
of the generous
Peke
sponsors,
Sugedamo
and likewise all the
Shiki
male and female household
Suba
lay people who have come. I would like to offer you my greetings. I hope you are well.
Da Deang Da Kasan Mam Shuagi
Now, I'd like to
Peke
continue with the teachings
Soji
on the life of
Lamda
Atisha
Chokisha
from yesterday. Now, as I mentioned yesterday,
Deang Una Kasan Shubin
before
Shisha
Atisha went to Tibet,
Choji Pelia Mabe Konglia Karsana
he is already
Gyakhaliya
rather
Tokun
well known
Khansangi da
throughout
Nyeba
India.
Chibuye de Chiktenere
Not only that, as is
Lotsang
explained in
Maksebegi
Taranata's History
Ane
of
Chona Dizu
Buddhism in
Taranagi
India,
Gyawa
it is written
Shinjungi
that
Sunda de Shebe
Atisha
Nama
eventually
Ane
became the
Choji
abbot of
Chisu
Vikramashila Monastery,
Vikramashili Zulalam Nyekang Kembo Nanda
and he
Tane
was also
Shimgi
an abbot of the
Udantapuri Zulalam
Udantapuri
Nyekang
Monastery.
Dje Sungduwa Da Tezam Nama Sebe
Moreover,
Kazan Shubana
as
Shingi
I've mentioned
Ane
before, in
Kaptedu
India
Gyawa
at that
Ge Da
time,
Navasangi
there were
Be
four
Nyeba
main
Zubada
schools
Bre
of the foundation vehicle, or
Chase da
Shravaka school, the
Kuki
four root schools. So
Chacho
these were four
Chawe
main
deva shilo
schools,
daga deva
and
shiduchi
all four of these
yoke
schools,
tizu samegi ane
without any dissension, revered him
tsebabe
as a guru.
lamalia
And this is
kumbya de shishi
described
daga
in
de
many of
chowe
Atisha's
de be lama kumbya ane
biographies.
tende yungudwa di gyunzen
So, for
dene
this reason, we can say
anda
that before he went to
pele
Tibet,
mabe kongi
Atisha
ane
was
chola
always
choji di
was already very well known in India, had some fame, and he
cheye da
also had a
yue
very
chi
wide
da
activity.
dana shingi zirin ge oye de chi
So
chagi
next,
sari
I'd like to speak about how he
da
was
dene
brought to
shamli ya ji
Tibet.
pyo do den cheng zu go ji shu
And
yi
when we
pyo do
speak
den
about
cheng
how
zu go
Atisha was
shu
brought to Tibet,
de yam
it was
ane
different in the old
da
times than it
kisang da
is
mi do
now.
na nga mi na ji
If you're going to
kya
bring
ga
Indian
gu de da
Panditas to Tibet,
pyo le ya den de shu ya
or
da
to bring them to visit sites in Tibet,
da
or
na
if the
shin gi pyo
students
ge
were to
ne
go
go
to
ro wa da
India
ane lo
to,
mi yo
to
de
study,
ha le ya dro ya de
it was very difficult.
ka le shu ji yo
It was
da
like a very
zina
important
be
part
kala shu
of
shu ji
one's life. And in
cha de ge
particular, Ashitisha at that time
Labar to choji takab di du sane kya ha ki
was one of the most
pena
famous
ya
and important
pedi
Buddhist
pedi so
gurus in
pangwe ki
India.
lama ta kala khansam ki
He was very
nipa
well known and
shimye de
very
chi de
important guru.
ke shimbu chi chagi ye bin du sane ta ten de
And so,
bi
for
ta
such an
lama
important, such
de
a
ke
significant
shimbu
Lama
sa
to,
shimbu de ji pele ya
if
ngar
you
sa
wish to
de de
bring them to
shu
Tibet, you
sa
couldn't
bi
just
da ji
immediately
shu so
take them
so da
there.
ji da
And it
ta de
wasn't
ji
as
kya
if
har de
the
su
Indians would
yin ya
be
kong ji dong
ready
chong
to
sa
let
ba
him
ji
go.
ji me ba yi
So, for that reason,
Tende indu sane ta choji pyo ya dendin
so
shuya
we have to
ya
think about what were the
gyuzen
reasons
kang
why
de
Atisha
chi
had
ne
to be
pyo de
brought to
dendu shu.
Tibet and what
Tana shingi
circumstances were for him
ge
to go
kundeji
to
lo
Tibet.
ne pyo ya dendu shu tu
And
ba shu
so,
wes.
in
Labi
order to
mina
understand this, we
ta
need to first
tenya
understand
di
that
ha ko chebre ngele ya da choji
and
pyo
before
de
we
dendu shu
understand
ba
the reason
kunze
why
bari bari
Why
ha ko
Atisha was
chebre
brought
ya
to
ngele ya
Tibet, we
ji
need
lu
to
yu
know
gyam
the
zong
historical
kap ti
background.
du
There's
go
a
lu
fair
yu
amount
gyam
of
zong
historical
ngar
background that
samji
we must
ma
first
zu
know.
kien kwa de ke Kub ti du ta pyo gi
When you
pyo
think
kong jin
about the
jong gi
situation in Tibet, the
ta
Snow
ten
Land, or if you think of
chidang
the
chib sik
political
ne da
situation or the ritual
ta ne shin
situation,
gi ji chulu gi ne da ina re ka ji to ne da ji
it was actually a
ma
rather
si ka sho da
difficult time. It was a
ta
rather
nga chang bu chi
hard time in
de
Tibet.
yin de be ka bu chi ba da
Now, at the beginning of the
te ya
7th
chidang gi ta
century,
pyo
during
le
the
ya pyo ji
time
gu de ge
of the
go le ya
Tibetan king Sonsen
ne pyo ji
Gampo,
song zen ga bi ka bi
Buddhism
song
began
che
to
ne
spread
ne
into
sang ge
Tibet.
gi den ba ta go u chu ba de
And later, it was probably during the time of
Tene
King
ti
Trisong
shele ya pyoche
Detsen
chasung de
that
sebe kabli
these
ya
teachings
ane
of Buddha
sange
spread
denpa
very
gyaship
widely in
chare
Tibet.
uzhub
And
chi.
4 generations later,
Ti je ge ane
during the
mirib
time of
shiwa
Dharma Udum Tsen,
tama udum se ge
Dharma
kabli ya
Udum Tsen
ta tama udum sem ge ane jilo
persecuted
shige shige
Buddhism
korwa la
starting
ane
in
sange denpa
841
nubi
of the Common Era.
sange denpa nub che ne ane chi kashwa da ngar chege me gu
And
tsu
at
ne
that
ane
time,
kabli ya
the
sange
stainless teachings of Buddhism
be
had,
chu
that had
changme
been
go tsu shen
uh, established during the time of the earlier Dharma kings, was persecuted and had declined quite severely. Now, Langdharma had two sons, one named Usung and one named Yumten. And among the two of them, the son named Usung had a nephew named Kidenima Gun. Kidenima Gun was unable to stay in the area of central Tibet, and he had to go to an area that was then called Shangshun, but these days it's known as Ngari. So he fled to the area of Ngari, and in that area he actually became the king. So Kidenima Gun had three sons, and because he had three sons, so that there wouldn't be any, when they got large, that there wouldn't be any conflict between them. He thought that would not be good if they had conflict. And so he took the area of Sacha that was under his control and divided into three parts. And he gave one area to each of his three sons. And so for that reason, the term of the three regions of Ngadi originated at that time. Now, when you divide Nari into three parts, among those, there was one area called Purang. And this was ruled by the second son, Tashi Degun. So Tashi Degun ruled over this area. Later, this is the area where the Guge dynasty, which is well known at this time, began. So the Guge dynasty originated from that area. The king of the area of Purang, Tashi Degun, had two sons, and the elder was named Songe. Now, some people would say that it's Kore. Some people say it's Kore, and some people it's Songe, but most people say that his name was Songe. They say that Songe was the elder son. So most people think that's a more reliable source. In any case, the elder son Songe later went forth and was given the monastic name Hla Lama Yeshe Ur. When we say Hla Lama, the reason he's called that is at first he was the king, or Hla, and because the king became a lama, so he's called Hla Lama or King Lama. Now, Hla Lama Yeshe Ur had a very strong influence on Tibetan history, had a very large legacy. Now, among his legacy, there are main three reasons for him to have a large legacy. The first of these is that the teachings of the Buddha spread from the area from Ngadi, from Upper Ngadi. And the reason for this is that we say that the vow spread from there is that he invited the three Palas from India to establish the Vinaya transmission, and from then the teachings of the Vinaya could spread from Upper Tibet. Then he also built a new monastery in Ngari that is called Tuling. And so this is the earliest monastery in the history of Ngari. And to these days, the Tuling monastery has not been damaged that much, and it is preserved to a fairly good degree. Now, his second legacy is that he brought Atisha to Tibet. And the third legacy is that he fostered many translators, including the great translator Rinchen Sangpo. That many of the transmissions of this new transmission of Secret Tamba could be translated into Tibetan. He's also supported these translations. And so that was his third main legacy. Now, Yeshe followed only about 100 years after Langdharma's persecution of the Buddha. If you count back from Yeshe back to Langdharma, there are probably 5 generations. And during these 5 generations, Buddhism had declined severely. In particular, when Yeshe was the king, then when he was king, it was called Songhe. The area that was under his control in Ngari or Shangshun was actually the origin of the Bun religion. It is the place where the Bun religion first developed. It was like the source, the origin of the Bun religion. So this is, and that was the area of Shangshun or Ngari. And from one perspective, the Ngari was the origin of the Bun religion, and also even during the time of Yeshe Ur, there are many people there who had faith in the Bun religion. There are a lot of them. In addition to that, at that time in Tibet, the situation was that people didn't know the pure view and conduct, and wrong views and behavior spread very widely. It's like wrong views and wrong conduct has spread everywhere in Tibet. Now, it wasn't only the Tibetans who spread the false Dharma. There are also many Panditas who had come from India. The reason why there are so many Panditas is because the Tibetans at that time considered everyone who came from India and very important and respected them very greatly, and they would offer them gold. And so, for that reason, some Panditas went to go gather gold. They went to Tibet in order to gain some gold. They spun up various Dharma teachings, and in particular, there are many of them who taught the secret mantras improperly, such as the Pandita Shantakompa and Atsamapa. They weren't authentic gurus. They were not authentic teachers, but they came to Tibet. There's quite a few. Some of them may have been authentic, but because they were seeking for gold, they would teach all sorts of Dharma. They teach secret mantra of Vajrayana, thinking it was pretending it was very profound, and they come collect gold. And when the king Songhe or Lama Yeshe saw this, he saw that among them, he saw that the accord of many people, like whether they're mantra practitioners, whether they're monastics, that their conduct was not in accord with the Dharma. He made many rules. Actually, he wrote many decrees that were objecting to those who practice mantra improperly. And in order to reform the secret mantra Vajrayana conduct, he made many laws and procedures and decrees. When we look at the old documents and old biographies of Lama Yeshe, we see that at that time, that in order to he made many laws and made many laws in order to correct the Buddhist teachings, but they did not really help much. And so, for that reason, it was thought very important to authentic Panditas and scholars from India in order to correct the teachings, to reform the teachings of the Buddhism in Tibet. And because of this, then that was the main reason why that's the main reason we began to bring Tibetan to Tibet. So next, if we speak about how Atisha was brought to Tibet, now, as I mentioned before, then inviting Atisha to Tibet was Yeshua's second legacy. Now, the reason why he brought Atisha to Tibet was, as I described, to eliminate all of the confusions and mistakes and wrong views and conduct within Tibetan Buddhism. He wanted to eliminate these problems. So this is why he was brought to Tibet. No, at that time, in order to eliminate all those wrong views and wrong conducts, there wasn't any guru in Tibet who could be a really respected lama, a real source of the guru, of teachings. And so in that time, the source of Dharma was India. Those who came from India were revered by everyone, and Tibetans paid respect to Indians that were different than to others. And so if one needed a lama who was respected by everyone in Tibet, then you had someone who came from India itself. So this is basically the social situation that it had. Now, if you're going to bring just any guru with some sort of well-known in India, it had to be someone who was actually rather famous. And if they were very at a very advanced stage already, it would be very difficult for them to come. So it'd be someone who was of an appropriate age, who could be brought to Tibet. Likewise, that guru had to be learned in both sutra and tantra, because at that time in Tibet there were many people practicing who did not know sutras and practiced tantra incorrectly. And so the guru who was invited had to be learned in both the sutra and tantra. Now, another important point, that another qualification was that the Lama had to be altruistic and have good conduct, because at that time in Tibet, the monastics and tantric practitioners didn't have good conduct. And so, in order to correct those problems, in order to bring a lama that everyone could take as an example, you had to have someone who had good conduct. And if you wanted to spread the teachings of the Buddha, you need to have someone who had the altruism, the wish to spread the teachings of the Buddha. And basically, in Tibet, if you need to invite an Pandita from India who had all these qualifications, there's really no one who would be better to invite than Atisha. Because basically, there was no one else in India who would have been better to bring than Atisha. And so at that point, it was just no choice but to invite Atisha. Now, however, so the person who thought of the idea of bringing Atisha to Tibet, who actually originated that, but the person who actually who was actually able to bring Atisha to Tibet was Chanchu Ur. Yeshe Ur was not able to actually bring Atisha to Tibet, and he never actually met Atisha. Now, in some histories, it is said that Yeshe Ur actually sacrificed his own life in order to bring Atisha to Tibet. There are these stories. Now, some historians, and particularly many contemporary historians, say that this is not true. There are some people who say this, but at that time, we don't need to speak about that. And in any case, whether or not he sacrificed his life, we don't know that. But if Yeshe Ur had not been, then Atisha would never have been able to bring back, because he's the one who actually made the plans, who laid the plans for Atisha to be brought to Tibet. So, if without him, Atisha would not have been able to come. I have to wonder how Atisha traveled to Tibet, how he came to Tibet. Now, at that time, Palama Yeshe Ur gave the responsibility for bringing Atisha to Tibet. He gave the responsibility to an elder translator named Gyatso Sengye. So this translator, Gyatso Sengye, who's rather old, he was a senior, and so he gave the entire responsibility to him. However, Gyatso Sengye went to India in order to invite Atisha, but things didn't work out. And because I think he was unable to bring Atisha to Tibet. No, not long afterward, Palama Yeshe Ur also had grown old, and he passed away. Now, at the time that he was passing away, he had his nephew Chanchu Ur. So his successor was Chanchu Ur, and he told his successor and nephew Chanchu Ur that you absolutely must bring Atisha to Tibet. He left it as his last will and testament. So Chanchu Ur, in order to fulfill his uncle's wish, he said whatever he needed to do, he decided to do whatever is necessary to bring Atisha, and he sent another translator, Nakso Lotsawa, back to India to invite Atisha. And Nakso Lotsawa, he went with several companions in his party, and at that time, when they arrived in India, Atisha was staying at the Vikramashila monastery. Now, the Vikramashila was probably built in the latter half of the 8th century by the 4th king of the Pali dynasty, named Dharmapala. And this monastic university was probably the second most important one after Nalanda. In particular, it was a hub for the study of Vajrayana. And many teachings of the unexcelled Yoga Tantra were taught and studied at Vikramashila monastery. In any case, Nakaronsala and his party went to Vikramashila, and at that time, the guru who had first gone to invite Yatisha was actually staying there at the time. He was probably studying there, I think. And so they first had some discussions. They talked about how they should bring Atisha to Tibet. And when they discussed this, Gyatso Sengye said to them, I came in the past. I came here at the request of Lalam Yeshut, and I came to bring Atisha back, but I was unable to do so. And he explained all the reasons why in detail. And so he had a plan. We need to do something. Because in the past they had been able to invite Atisha before, so now they absolutely had to bring him to Tibet. And so they needed to think of some method, some way to bring him to Tibet. And what they decided is that Jetsundra Singh said, Naso Losao, don't go. Don't tell anyone that you've come here to bring Atisha to Tibet. Just pretend that you're going to do that you're studying itself. And then when the time is right, I will tell you what you need to say to Ashita to bring it to. And so he had this idea. And so Naso, the translator, did as Gyatso Sengye said, and for a year or two, they had no discussions at all of inviting Atisha to Tibet. And he stayed there during that time. Then one day, they were able to go see Atisha and discuss bringing him to Tibet. And when they had that opportunity to see him, they explained to him the entire situation. What Atisha said was, you Naksul Lotsawa, tell it. That Tibetan king must be a real bodhisattva. He's thinking about spreading the teachings of Buddhism for the sake of sentient beings. And so for that reason, if I were to go against the instructions of a bodhisattva, that wouldn't be right. And you have the instruction of a bodhisattva to go to Tibet, and you've come here with much hardship, so I definitely must figure out a way to go to Tibet. So this is what he accepted, but he still must have had a little bit of a doubt in his mind. If he said, if I go to Tibet, will actually be beneficial for the teachings of Buddhism and for sentient beings. He must have had a little bit of doubt about this. Now, as I said yesterday, he thought whenever he had a little bit of a doubt or question, he would immediately supplicate and ask Lady Tara. And so he did this, and so for that reason, he also supplicated Tara. He prayed to her, and he asked her, and what she directed him, she prophesied that if you going to Tibet now would be very beneficial for Buddhism and for sentient beings. And in particular, it would be beneficial for one layperson. Now, who is that layperson, if you wonder? Later, Atisha said that it was Donchen Gyalwa Jungne, because Donchen Gyalwa Jungne was like the source of all the Kadampa teachings. I'm saying that it would benefit a singular person. That layperson meant this Donchen Gyalwa Jungne. This is Tara's present. Now, it's such a big undertaking that he decided to go to Bodh Gaya again, make grand offerings, and supplicate. And began to, and as preparing to go, there was a Kempo named Gyanas Sri Mitra, who gave me a handful of cowrie shells. He said there's an old person, an old chanted person with dreadlocks. He's very pale, and so give these to him. Then Atisha went to Bodh Gaya, and when he arrived in Bodh Gaya, as the Kempo Gyanashri Mitra, he saw this old uh, uh, yogi with long dreadlocks, and when he saw them, that old yogi said, even before Atisha could say anything, he said, where are those cowrie shells that you've been brought for me? Give them to me. And when he said this, then Atisha realized that this old man is not some ordinary person. He really he must have clairvoyant powers, and so for that reason, it must be a Dakini, he thought. But because he was a monastic, he couldn't immediately prostrate to the guru. That wouldn't be quite right. But mentally he prostrated. He imagined that he was prostrating. And he then asked him if he went to Tibet, if it would be beneficial or not. When he asked this, the old man, and just as Tara had said before, this old man said, if you go to Tibet, it'll be very beneficial. And so then Atisha asked, Tibet is a long way and it's a very difficult place to get to, and so for that reason, he said, will there be any obstacles to my life and body? And then the man said to him, if you go to Tibet, your life will be shorter. If you stay in India, you will live longer. This is what he said. And he said, how longer? Then Atisha said, well, how much shorter will it be? Atisha asked. And then in response, the old man said, if you don't go to Tibet, you will live to the age of 92. If you go to Tibet, you will only live to 73. So this means it would shorten your life by 20 years. Now, at that time, what Atisha thought to himself was, if I go to Tibet, it'll be beneficial. That's definite. And Lady Tara said this, and now this Dakini also made this prediction. So it's certain that it'll be beneficial. And if it's going to be beneficial, it does really no difference if my life is shorter. He had roused really strong courage and decided he was going to Tibet. Now, if he had gone immediately to Tibet and just gone he wouldn't have been able to go, because at that time, Atisha was really famous, and he had very great activity in India. He was really necessary in India. He was such a necessary and significant figure that the Indian kings wouldn't let him go. Likewise, the monastery officials wouldn't allow him go immediately. And so for that reason, he tried to make a little bit of a method. And he printed that instead of going to Tibet, he was going on a pilgrimage. He went over here and over there, hither and thither. He went to many pilgrimage spots, and eventually he went to Nepal. And he went to Nepal at that time. There was an elder monk from Vikramashila Monastery, and this elder monk began to feel a little bit uneasy about this, saying, Atisha's traveling all over with Naxalao and those other Tibetans. And so he also went along with Atisha, and when they arrived in Nepal, then only then did he understand that Atisha wanted to go to Tibet. And so that's when Atisha told this to the elder monk from Vikramashila. And at that point, then this elder went to Naxal and he criticized him. He said, you said you came that you're studying, but you were kind of lying through your teeth. You came to kidnap this person. And so he basically scolded him. So he scolded Naxalata. And then what he said is, it's not as if you have such great hopes in Tibet. to bring Tibet, and he came to Tibet, and we understand that. And it's not as if we don't want to let him go at all. But if he goes to Tibet and spends a long time in Tibet, there's the danger that the Buddhism in India will decline. And so for that reason, we don't let him go. We don't dare let him go. So this is what this elder Bhikshu said. In any case, in the end, Nakso the translator and that Indian elder monk discussed it, and they made an agreement that Atisha would spend no more than 3 years in Tibet. And after 3 years, then Nakso Lhasa himself would have to bring him back to India. And he had Nakso Lhasa make a strong oath. And only then did the monastery elder accept that they would be allowed to bring Atisha to Tibet. Before that, he wouldn't let them go. And so there were really quite a few difficulties in bringing Atisha to Tibet. When Nakso Lhasa and his party came to bring Atisha to Tibet, then Atisha was already in his 50s. When you think about the life expectancy of that time, in your 50s is already rather old. And moreover, as I explained earlier, Atisha, according to some histories, was the abbot of the Vikramashila monastery and the Odantapuri monastery, as I said. So whether he's the abbot or not, but in any case, he was like the leader or one of the main figures in many different important monasteries. It's like a lot of responsibilities in these important temples. So for that reason, Atisha always had on his belt, he always had a keyring, and it said that he had a minimum of 18 keys on his belt. In any case, and so the suspicion, so there's it's quite understandable that the Indians had a lot of suspicion that he was going to Tibet. In some stories, it's said that there's a wall in Vikramashila monastery, there were murals, and on one side was Nagarjuna was painted, and the other side Atisha was painted. And so if they could, at that time, they considered him on the same level as Nagarjuna. In any case, Atisha, after he went to Nepal, he spent just about a year in Nepal. He spent a year, but during this time, the unfortunate thing that happened was that the senior translator, Gyatso Sengye, passed away in Nepal. And when he passed away, then at that time, Atisha was quite disappointed. He said, he was discouraged. He said, now the translator does not. And now the translator is like, I have no tongue. It's the same. If I go to Tibet, since I have no translator, is there going to be any benefit to going? And so he got a little discouraged. And when that happened, when Atisha got discouraged, then what Ngotso Lhasa said was, there's no need to get discouraged about that, because there is a well-known translator, Rinchen Sampo. He's much better than us. He's a wonderful translator, and for that reason, there's no difficulty about a translator. In general, for ordinary conversation, if you have some easy things to think, I can translate basically. So please. So you should not think that you don't have a translator. You absolutely must continue on to Tibet. And so he insisted, and because of this, then she should continue on to Tibet, and arrived in Ngadi in 1040, when Atisha was 59 years old. Now at that time, Changshu it had been a long time since Changshu had directed that Atisha would be brought to Tibet. And for a long time ago, he had already made all the preparations for Atisha's arrival. And when Atisha and his entire retinue came, and they were near to the Toting monastery, what it is said is that there is like 300 lay people on white horses. It's like the white people on white horses, white people in white robes on white horses, waiting with banners and pennants and various offerings to give a grand welcome. And in particular, this was different than any previous one, in that there was a new instrument. They made a new musical instrument. And that musical instrument was, so that now that we're bringing Atisha, it's really important. And so we need a horn with a really strong, loud tone that you can hear from a long way away, a very loud thing. And so that is when what we call the great horns, and sometimes we call them the raktung or copper horns, and sometimes we call them the red horns, the dungmar. They're the raktung that we play, right? And so they were invented at that time, it said. And so another name for the raktung is the horn for horn for inviting the scholar and translator. And so at that time, they invented a new type of musical instrument with a really loud tone. And so at that time, all the people on horses and cows and all ran away. They fled. All of the wild animals on the hills fled when they heard the sound. This is as it says in the story. There's a little story about this. And what the story says is that there was an old woman who was milking. She was milking a cow or a yak. And all of a sudden, when they played the raktung suddenly, then all the Tibetan animals in Tibet never heard a raktung before, and they immediately heard this like loud sound. Then they all ran away. And so all the animals ran away. And so whether it was the female yak or whether it was a zoma or some other animal, all of the milk that she had spilled on the floor. And the lady was all the milk spilled on the old lady. And she got really angry. I don't care if he's a Joe, I don't care if he needs to give me back the money for my milk. She got really upset. She got a whole handful of dust to go and to find out who is this Joe, who is this Atisha. Wasted all of my milk today. She was thinking they had to go throw dust on him. And so she thought he was going to go throw dust on him. And when she saw Atisha coming, instead of bringing him, like, Atisha, see him in this huge procession, like Joe was incredibly handsome, really good looking, but something attractive to everyone found attractive. The old woman went to throw dust on him, but when she got there, when she saw Atisha, she forgot about throwing the dust, and she just completely forgot. Who is that handsome person? It's actually, it was completely captivated me. And so the old lady just completely forgot about throwing this. So this is I don't know if it's history or just a tale, but this is a story that we tell. Now after this, next I would like to speak about how Atisha taught the Dharma when he arrived in Tibet, and how he went to central Tibet and so forth. And I'll speak about this tomorrow, but that is enough for today.